show. We'll do the best for you. And I believe that we have the power, have the power. I hate the state, and I know I'm a slave. We can make a break the power, break the power.
Hello. You're listening to the Punk Rock Libertarians podcast, episode 47. I am Matt Bergman, and I am here tonight with Jared Schneiderman.
Hey.
What's so funny, dude?
Your face.
Oh, okay. And Big Eth.
I too am amused by your face.
Ethan Montgomery.
What's up?
He's back in the house.
Oh, yeah.
Represent.
And he brought his vape pen.
Ooh, vaping. Vape, bro.
Yeah.
Sup, bro?
Yeah, so anyways, this Friday, which is Friday, March 4th, we're going to have an event in Baltimore. This event is sponsored by the Daily Liberator and Punk Rock Libertarians. We're going to have Gary Johnson speak at Alewife downtown. And if you haven't been to Alewife, the food's awesome. I would recommend the Smoke Burger. They've got a lot of great beers on tap. And my buddy Chad Wells is the executive chef there, and he wrote the entire menu, and the food's just fucking great. So Gary Johnson's going to come speak. We're in a private room upstairs. It should be a blast. So if you're anywhere near Baltimore, I'd say come out on Friday. He's going to be speaking we're going to be hanging out from 7:30 to 9:30, and I don't know, maybe we'll chill around for a little while afterwards too. But yeah, it should be a blast. Tickets are limited, so you can get if you get your ticket in advance online, it's going to be $15, or if you get it at the door, it's going to be $20. But I believe the room has like a fire capacity of like 138 people, so I think ticket sales are going to be cut off after like 100 sales. So you can actually go to Gary Johnson's Facebook page and go under events, and there'll be a link in there to find tickets, and you can purchase your ticket in advance online to just make sure you have a spot. But yeah, it should be pretty fucking badass.
Yeah, man. Excited about that.
Yeah, dude. Are you popping a Johnson chub?
I got a halfie. Got a halfie going.
A semi.
Yeah.
So speaking of Johnson, they just had a Libertarian Party debate in Mississippi.
Yeah. Did you watch?
No. I did not.
How about you, Ethan?
I did not. I saw online. I saw what I thought was just somebody taking like a really shitty looking cell phone video from like the corner of the room or something. Apparently that was in fact
like
the
far
official
corner of the
video
room.
feed.
Totally.
And it looks terrible. And so I don't know what they got going on there, but they need to address that, because that looked absolutely terrible. Because otherwise I might have watched it, but as soon as I saw it, I was like, oh, this is just some shitty.
Yeah, like I tried starting to watch it, and it was like barely audible, like what they were saying.
Yeah, so I was like, oh, well, I'll just wait for them to put the actual official thing out, and then I could actually like see and hear them.
And
but
like,
apparently that was the official thing. So that's kind of a big
what blows
big
my
fuck
mind
up
is
on their
apparently
part.
they paid somebody to record that.
Well, yeah, that's unacceptable.
It's like, yeah, who did you pay to record that? It's fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I could have done a better job with my cell phone in the front row.
Yeah, well, it didn't just look like any cell phone. Like it looked like a flip phone from 8 years ago. Like quality, it was awful.
Yeah.
So I didn't watch it. I mean, obviously we know Gary Johnson was there. I'm not even sure who else is running. I know, unfortunately, Austin Peterson is running.
Yeah.
So I assume he was at the debate.
Yeah.
Which is unfortunate. Who else? Who else is running? So I mean, this is for the Libertarian Party nominee. So who else is running?
Well, there's your boy Austin Peterson, and then and then there's John McAfee, who I gotta say I love the guy. I think he's a little nuts.
He does seem nuts.
He wouldn't be my first choice to represent the LP, but I do love the guy. I gotta say, if he wins, I'll vote for him. And then of course Gary Johnson was there. And there was one dude, I didn't catch all the names. I know Daryl Perry, he was there. He was pretty fucking good. He was cool.
Where have I heard that name before?
I believe he's actually I believe he lives in New Hampshire.
Okay. So is he like Free State Project?
I believe so.
Associated, okay.
And then there was this one dude, I didn't catch his name, but he was like the Libertarian Ben Carson. He was just like really quiet. And
Was he black? Is that why you're saying that?
No, I couldn't see what the fuck he looked like because
See, that's how bad the
camera's
video
so
was.
far
You couldn't
away.
even tell if this guy was black or
Yeah,
not.
you could see like seven.
LP, get your
seven
shit together with
podiums or
your
something,
production.
but you couldn't really tell which candidate was where.
That's so awful.
It was it was just.
I think I should be taken out back and shot.
Yeah, they would have done
Along
better
with
just
Austin
not
Peterson.
having a video at all because that video just really made us look low rent.
Yeah.
It does. It does. And I mean, assuming that this is going to be a lot of people's first introduction to these candidates, I mean, first impressions count for a lot. And
I think
not that it
it's
reflects
really,
on the candidates, but just as the whole party and the
I
process.
think it's really too. I think it's down to organization, dude. Because you can't tell me that there's like, I can't. It's unbelievable to me that if they set out a memo like, "Hey, who wants to do the Libertarian debate?" I can't imagine that you wouldn't have some like college video majors that would be like, into libertarianism and smoking pot and shit, and they're gonna come out and do a much better job than what they had going.
Well, who knows?
For probably next to nothing.
Who knows what happened?
And you're also
there.
talking about a major political party that should have enough money to foot the bill for one night of recording.
You'd think.
I mean, you're not talking about a major video production. You're talking about just getting a nice shot, some good audio. Like, it's not crazy money we're talking here. It's pretty ridiculous.
Well, so Matt, did you watch the debate?
I watched. I believe I watched like the first half of it because at
Okay.
some point there was like. At some point the video totally cut off and I was waiting there and it was supposed to be like a 15-minute wait, and I was waiting for a while and I was like in like the chat and stuff and I was like trolling Austin Peterson,
Nice.
Yeah.
Was
and,
anybody responding to your troll?
Yeah, some people were laughing uncontrollably, and then some people kept posting like Austin Peterson 2016, and one dude kept commenting Austin Peterson wasn't prepared. It was funny. It was like he was trolling him, but he was trying to sound like I don't know. Anyway,
like a concerned troll or something.
But yeah, there was a ton of like comments flying up, back and forth where people were talking about their candidate and stuff, and so anyways, and I was ragging on Peterson mostly. And yeah, I mean, it was pretty entertaining. And then for that 15-minute break, I was sitting there, and it was just like, whoa, this has to be more than 15 minutes. I was wondering, is this going to come back? Is this a technical difficulty? And I just got off. So I'm not sure if they came back after that. I think they did.
Yeah.
And then by that time, I heard the buzz around Facebook. I was just like, I'll stop watching that. It was just like, yeah, it was pretty hard to watch,
Well, so as far as the content of the debate, what the candidates were saying, was there anything that struck you as particularly differentiating one from the other, or is it just sort of your generic LP status bullcrap?
I mean, I don't know. I thought it was kind of hard to pay attention to just because like the video was just like so boring. I was mostly just like, throwing stupid comments on like the live YouTube stream.
It was such a boring debate that you found a more productive use of your time to just troll people on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, it's like I don't know. I thought Gary did great. I thought McAfee did great. And then there was the Libertarian Ben Carson that was just really fucking boring every time he spoke. And then Austin Peterson. It's a shame that the guy is I feel like he is talented at speaking. I feel like he's a good speaker. He just comes off as a douche. Like I don't know. I mean,
you know why that is? Why he comes across as a douche?
gee, why?
Because he is a douche.
Yeah, dude.
He's just the most smug fucking cocksucker. See, what I think the problem with Austin Peterson is Peterson. Why I find him so annoying is that he's one of those people that speaks better than he thinks, and you can sort of tell that like he has this like very eloquent way, and he's very confident in the things that he says, whatever. But then you actually think about what he's saying, and it's just a bunch of stupid bull crap. And I just find that so obnoxious when he's very deliberately trying to give himself an air of confidence and authority, and like, I know what I'm talking about. And you realize he has no fucking clue what he's talking about. He's a complete jackass.
I mean,
I think he's just completely full of himself, and he's smug as all get out.
And also to me, he comes off as the kind of dude that's like, okay, Rand Paul's out, so come on, guys. Now we got to vote GOP because they're better than the Dems, and he just seems like that kind of person to me. Like
He's very condescending.
He doesn't seem
There's
like
something
somebody
about
who
him.
would vote for a third party. You know, he sounds like he considers himself to be like a libertarian-leaning Republican. You know, which his website is called the Libertarian Republic. You know, so like that's why I don't even buy him running for the LP. Like, you know, I think he's in it for him, and that's it. I mean, I feel like.
Well, I don't think he has any chance of getting the nomination, and I don't think that's what it's about for him. I'm sure for him it's all just basically a publicity stunt, which I fundamentally don't have any problem with, but it does sort of, I think it has to be categorized under his douchiness, you know.
You know, it's weird though. He does kind of have like a little cult of personality, like following him. You know, there were a lot of people. I don't know. Maybe it was just robots that he set up before he left the house. But you know, they were like, there's a lot of people commenting like AP 2016. You know, and like all sorts of other stupid bullshit during the debate. And then one thing I got to say too, more than any other candidate, he probably has like a bunch of internet lackeys.
Sure, because like you said, he's just building up a cult of personality.
Well, yeah, I mean, this motherfucker's been trolling Facebook since, like, you know, I don't know, I mean, at least 6 or 7 years.
I think there was actually a time where he wasn't that bad. I remember when I first started following him on Facebook, I actually thought, I was like, oh, this guy's pretty cool. But then he would just start posting just like, every once in a while it'd be something like, you know, like the nap is bullshit or something like that.
Yeah,
Or just like something super objectivist, or just not, you know, not even like philosophically grounded, and you're kind of like, wait a second, what is this guy's angle? And then the Libertarian Republic came out, and you know, it was basically just like a clickbaity, you know, ad revenue site, and you realize, oh, okay, this guy even really a libertarian, or is he just a marketer? You know, is he just trying to make a buck off of a movement that's growing? I mean, because what principles does he really have? I mean,
he doesn't seem to have any. I mean, he's actually come on Cantwell's show before, and you know they've had it out a bit, and they managed to be reasonably respectful to one another. But he has no principles, and he will be very condescending and say that, oh, anarchists are stupid because, you know, all of your principles are completely unpractical and blah blah blah. And so he's trying to make this case for practical libertarianism, but then can't even make a good case for like why that would work or be good. It's like, okay, we've been trying your method for, I mean, how long has the LP been around and how much has it accomplished? You know, absolutely nothing. So he's just a condescending douchebag, and I can't stand him. I'd be more curious to hear about what McAfee had to say. I know that he had, I guess it was, I think a letter to the editor or some sort of a piece that, I'm not sure who first published it, but McAfee talking about the FBI wanting to get into iPhones and that whole thing. Was that something that came up in the debate from McAfee? I mean, surely that had to have come up at some point in the LP debate, the whole issue with the government wanting to crack into the San Bernardino shooter's iPhone.
Yeah, not while I was watching.
Well, fair enough.
Yeah, I don't remember it.
Well, certainly. I mean, his I thought his op-ed, whatever you'd call it, you know, it was pretty brilliant, fairly scathing. I think if nothing else, just goes to show, you know, what are these people's real intentions in terms of wanting to have this sort of power.
What were the bullet points of his op-ed?
I'm sorry?
What were the bullet points of his op-ed?
Well, basically in summary, that to do this would be opening up a completely unconstitutional Pandora's box of privacy violations and compromises in security and this and that and blah, blah, blah. And basically what he was saying was like, look, we can crack this one phone without doing it through the channels of forcing Apple to create this master key that can unlock anything, anywhere, anytime.
Yeah, but that's not what they're interested in. You know, he offered to crack the phone. Yeah.
Exactly, and that's his whole point.
Contacted him.
Exactly, and that's his whole point. Was like, look, if this was really about just getting into this one phone, it can be done. I'm a world-leading security expert on computer technology, and he said
pretty sure it wouldn't even require
phone,
somebody at his skill level. I'm pretty sure you could take any hacker kid in his basement.
Well, that's what he said. He's like, look, you people are complete idiots. Like, you guys don't have any fucking clue what you're doing. But the people out there are people out there that do know how to do this kind of stuff, and they're working for example, the Russians and the Chinese or whatever. And these people are out there, and we can do this for you. And so the whole point was that John McAfee was saying, like, look, let me have a crack at it. I'll get a good team of guys together, and we'll have the thing open like in a week or two or whatever, and I'll do it for free. And you don't have to go through all these fucking court orders and overturning and shredding the Constitution and violating all sorts of nonsense and compromising the security of everything, basically. Excuse me. And of course, if you don't take me up on this, well, then clearly this isn't about getting into this phone. This is about a usurpation of power and having the authority to have this, master key that'll open any lock kind of a thing.
Right.
And so, as Matt said, guess who the FBI is not contacted about this? John McAfee.
Well, it's also related to the fight right now to ban encryption.
Sure, yeah, and it's very much the same exact thing.
Yeah.
Is that they don't like encryption, they don't like the fact that other people have privacy, and this is their attempt to get around it. I mean, if for nothing else, look at how long it took for them to come up with this idea of, oh, now we need to get into the phone. Well, no shit, they fucking this all happened months ago.
Yeah.
Why is this just now coming up? They're like, oh, now all of a sudden it's a priority to get into the phone. Like, none of it adds up unless you look at it from the perspective of, oh, it's just a power grab from the federal government.
Right.
Which, obviously libertarians and anarchists already know that that's what the game is all about.
Right.
But for anybody else, again, look at what John McAfee said, what he's offering. Why is the government not taking him up on his offer? Because that's not what it's about. It's not about getting into this one phone.
Right.
So I don't know. I think there have been some developments, like legally, as far as the court proceedings with what's going on with that. I'm unfortunately not aware of them. I think some stuff has happened within the last week with that.
I'm not.
Are
I'm
you
not
guys
sure about
familiar?
that.
Yeah, neither am I. But yeah, I mean, it's a pretty big, serious fucking deal. So
Cool. So I think you wanted to talk about your feelings on Mr. Trump today.
Well, I mean, there's so many things to talk about. I mean, I don't even really know where to start or what's worth talking about. Other than I would just like to say that I'm thrilled that he's doing as well as he is in the primaries.
Why?
Again, disclaimer: I'm an anarchist. I don't vote. I'm not going to vote for Trump. I won't be happy about Trump being president, except in the context of what the other options are. In the context of we're gonna have a president, the federal government isn't going away, so this is the lesser of many evils. But if for no other reason than he's just a gigantic middle finger to the establishment of both parties. You just look at how much the establishment hates him, and that's about as good of a endorsement as I would be able to muster.
Right.
And so his counterculture wouldn't be the right word, although maybe it's getting to a point that it is. That he's certainly counter leftist culture. He's certainly counter PC culture, and he's counter current political culture. Which again is anything that I think any libertarian or anarchist should be able to appreciate and applaud, at least on some level.
Right.
Even
but
if
then
they
there's
don't.
also the whole, being anti-establishment doesn't mean you're pro-liberty, which I think
Yeah, no,
aptly
you're
describes Trump.
You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. But again, in the context of okay, but who else up there is? I mean, if your other choices are Ted Cruz or Marco Rubio, what libertarian ideal does anyone think that they're going to hold up that Donald Trump wouldn't? I mean, any one of them is a crapshoot. I'm sure whoever gets in is going to be terrible and is going to do terrible things or whatever.
But dude,
But if they can make leftists cry and tell them to go fuck themselves and empower other people to make leftists cry and tell them to go fuck themselves, that's what I'm more interested in, is him being able to empower people, to make people realize that it's okay to criticize these sick motherfuckers on the left. I think if nothing else, that's worth whatever he may possibly bring. And if he turns out to be some horrific fascist dictator that's slaughtering people, as long as he's slaughtering leftists, I mean, that's better than a lot of other possible outcomes. So
He's slaughtering leftists?
yeah.
Like literally killing people?
Well, I mean, that would be the worst case scenario. That's what the left thinks he's going to do. That's what they're worried about. I mean, I don't think they're really concerned about it. But of course, they call him brown shirts.
He's not.
Well, exactly. But they try to paint him like he's Hitler, like he's Mussolini, blah blah blah.
He didn't quote Mussolini.
Well, yeah. But even I'm saying worst case, even if he is, does turn out to be as bad as Hitler, as long as he's killing leftists, well, there's a lot worse things he could do. I mean, he could be slaughtering. he could be slaughtering millions of people in Iraq, which is a position that nobody else on the left or right currently opposes. But he's the only one that's come out and said Iraq was a terrible idea. We never should have done it. And he's also the only one that's currently non-interventionist among the Republicans or Democrats, including Bernie Sanders, about things like Syria.
Right.
You know, he's the only one that says, look, we shouldn't be fucking around over there. All we're doing is making it worse. It's not our fight. His foreign policy is essentially the non-interventionist libertarian foreign policy. And even in the case of, you know, he has these quotes about like, oh, well, you know, it comes to ISIS, we'll just fucking bomb the shit out of them and, you know, turn the desert into glass or whatever. Even that is not, obviously there's all sorts of tremendous problems with that. But again, compared to the other candidates, well, none of them are talking about not bombing things. All that Donald Trump is saying, like, okay, well, let's identify who the bad guys are, completely fucking obliterate them, and then come home. Right. Which is, again, not that far off from things that, you know, somebody like even a Ron Paul might say. Now, he was... It's a little bit of a stretch, but you see what I'm saying? That it's like,
if you're going after a clear enemy and not, like... trying to infiltrate a country and occupy and depose a dictator and play all these political war games.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like if you're going to assume that there is in fact a lethal threat out there, and that's a whole other discussion, but let's just assume that is in case the fact and that we all agree on that. Sure. Well, then the solution is to go fucking bomb them into the Stone Age and come the fuck home. Right. Which is all that he's advocating. Now, we can argue whether or not ISIS is worthy of bombing or not or whatever. They certainly seem like nasty guys, and I have no problem with them ending up being blown up or whatever. Yeah. But that's sort of a different discussion. But even on these things like foreign policy, I think for a libertarian, the things that he's saying is the stuff that libertarians have been saying and griping with the GOP over for years. Right. So again, if he's going to not murder 1 million people in the Middle East that never did anything to Americans, you know, a Muslim's never done anything to me. They never robbed me. They never hurt me. They've never done anything. Leftists do it on a daily fucking basis. So if my option is between bomb 1 million innocent Muslims in the Middle East that I have nothing to do with and they have nothing to do with me,
dude, but what about
the worst case, he becomes the American Hitler and starts slaughtering millions of leftists. Well, okay, I don't want millions of people to be slaughtered, but at least it would be the people that deserve it.
Dude, what about Donald Trump identifying as a liberal in the past, identifying with the left in the past, but now that he's running for president? You know,
I don't know that he's ever.
Pick Donald.
I don't know that he's ever identified specifically as leftist. I've seen people, you know, take these quotes from interviews where he says like, "Oh, there's lots of like things like Democratic positions I identify with." Well, this is what libertarians have always said. It's like, well, you know, I'm sort of left on some issues, right on some issues. I mean, it's a gross oversimplification. That's pretty. Well, yeah. Well, and again, I mean, here's the thing that's hilarious and amazing about him is basically he says like, yes, I backed them because they were giving me political favors. He's basically saying like, yeah, it was political corruption, and yeah, I engaged in it, but at least I'm honest about it. You know, he never says like, oh, well, I backed. Well, no, it doesn't. But hey, at least he's being honest about it. He's saying, look, you don't get to play ball as a billionaire unless you're getting the blessings of, you know, politicians, because politicians have the power to fuck with you. And when you have billions of dollars, they will fuck with you. Yeah. Legally, they will get, you know, permits pulled or zoning or God knows whatever. I mean, whether we like it or he likes it or not, the government is heavily involved in all of his business deals. Again, whether it's permits or zoning or God knows what. Yeah. The contracts. So he greased the wheels. But hey, he's the only one that's being open and saying, he's like, yeah, fucking politicians are bought and sold. How do I know? Because I fucking bought and sold them. So you is it right? No, but
are you saying that you believe that Donald is sincere?
I mean, on some things he seems to be. Overall, he's a politician. So of course I don't fucking trust him. Here's the reason why I. But if you're gonna make that argument, you can make it about any of them. So
here's the thing. Here's the thing about that though is, I think with Trump, and what scares me less about Trump is that he is not ideologically consistent in any way. He seems to blow with whatever the wind is. He's just trying to get elected. Hold on, let me finish. He's just trying to get elected as president. I think that's his sole goal, is to just get into office. Whereas you have somebody like Bernie Sanders, who is, for all intents and purposes, ideologically consistent as a democratic socialist or whatever. Really a socialist. So that scares me more in that I know that like Bernie is going to do whatever he can to implement his ideology as best that he can, whereas Trump, he may just go with whatever whatever the common trend is, whatever the population desires, which could be bad, which could be good, but at least it's not like we're guaranteed socialism or we're guaranteed fascism or we're guaranteed anything. So that, in my mind, is less threatening than at least Bernie Sanders. With Hillary, I mean, you're just getting your typical establishment leftist stuff, which isn't good either. So.
Well, and I mean, and she's the worst of it. What do you want to talk about? Establishment leftism. She's probably one of the most corrupt people in American politics of the last century. I mean,
I would
Clintons
say she's
are
the
just
worst,
horrific.
But I would also say Bernie is, Bernie is he's great on the drug war. You know, he's great on reducing the prison population.
Well, he's not going to reduce the prison population if he's locking up people, for tax violations and stuff like that, for regulation violations, for people that, I mean, I don't see how you can say that he's for reducing prison populations when he's talking about creating all sorts of new laws that would turn what people are doing every day today now into criminals. There's all sorts of things that I do or don't do today that would become criminal acts.
Like what?
If Bernie Sanders got his way, like 6% payroll taxes. If I don't pay that, I go to jail. Well, so, I mean, then the only argument left is like, oh, well, but they're laws that people will comply with as opposed to laws people won't comply with. I just find it very disingenuous to say, oh, prison populations are a bad thing. And so now I'm going to create all these new regulations that threaten to throw you in jail if you don't comply. I mean, that's not an improvement.
I get that.
I mean, he's still hands down the only candidate out of those top three that expresses any concern whatsoever about the drug war. So, and I mean, he's pretty great on the drug war. Okay, I mean, just give him one fucking thing. And then the other thing is, dude, it's how much is Bernie Sanders going to be able to get done with fucking Republican-controlled Congress?
I don't know. I mean, the Republican-controlled Congress we have today hasn't really done jack shit to stop Obama. Maybe you could make the argument they've slowed him down slightly on some things. Maybe, but I mean, what has the current Republican Congress really done? Not a whole lot, and Obama's been able to do a lot of damage in 8 years. I don't doubt that Bernie Sanders could do just as much damage in 8 years, if not more.
Well, maybe we need that damage, dude. Maybe we need Bernie Sanders to crash the entire system.
Well, I mean that's something that I'm not opposed to.
Yeah, I mean that's the thing. Like the more I look at it, the more I realize that most options do have like a silver lining in them. Like we kind of already went over the Trump silver lining. The Bernie silver lining is, socialism gets implemented, everything goes to shit, and then we can sort of rebuild from the ashes. I mean, if Hillary gets elected, I think if Bernie here's so I don't think Bernie is going to get the nomination. At least that's what I've been reading is. Hillary actually is pretty close to locking it up.
As far as like
now, I did read that on CNN, so it's probably biased. So, I mean, who knows? Yeah. But
even Robert Reich, the leftist economist, he came out basically, pro Hillary, anti Bernie, talking about how his socialist economic policies are absolutely terrible, whatever. Right.
So
anyway,
so what was I saying?
So it doesn't look like Bernie's going to get the nomination.
Right, okay. So, like, I'm just waiting for when he doesn't get it, if he doesn't get it, what is going to be the reaction of his, like, diehard supporters? Are they just going to fall in line behind Hillary? Or are they actually going to get angry? Like, they've threatened to, I've seen threats to, like, dismantle the DNC if Bernie Sanders doesn't get the nomination. I've heard actual threats of, like, burning down buildings and shit like that. How much of that is real? I don't know, but I'd kind of like to see it happen if it was.
Oh God, it'd be wonderful. So I mean, hey, there's the silver lining for Hillary gets the nomination. There's her silver lining.
I'm kind of just sitting back because either way, I'm gonna lose Liberty at the end of the day. So
yeah, so at least let it be entertaining.
At least let it be a fun and possibly help in the long run if it's one of the more positive silver linings.
Yeah, I mean. Anecdotally from the people people I'm friends with on Facebook or whatever, which is a pretty limited demographic. It is for any individual, but the people I see supporting Bernie, and most of the leftists I know of, in fact, I don't know of anybody, again, this is purely anecdotal, but I don't know of anybody that's supporting Hillary. Are you guys making fun of me?
No, that's just flicking me off.
So I don't know of anybody supporting Hillary. So they're all Bernie supporters, and the vast majority of them I've seen be openly critical of Hillary.
Yeah.
They see her as a corrupt establishment politician.
How principled are these people that they won't just be like, well, I got to vote for Hillary now that it's Trump versus Hillary? Instead of actually taking a stand like we do against the system itself, they're just going to fall back in line like, well, it's better to have a Democrat in office than Trump. Or any Republican. Yeah,
and I don't know. I mean, some will, some won't.
Like fall back in line, like Ethan's gonna fall back in line and kind of be like, "Well, it's better have Trump in office than a Democrat."
Well, no. The difference is. I mean,
tell us about the difference.
Most libertarians would rather see a Republican in office than a Democrat. For example, what I hope will happen, and I think this will be what makes the difference between whether people will vote for Hillary or get pissed off about it, is going to be whether they're smart enough to finally wake up and realize how the system really works, which is why you're seeing all these people being so pissed off about Bernie not doing better, is because they're finally realizing, oh wait, even the DNC, the party of morals and courageous upstanding for the little person, they're just a bunch of corrupt fucking politicians. Right. We all went through this in the Ron Paul campaigns in 2008 and 2012. And I think Ron Paul not getting the nomination in 2012 has created more just that little piece of history has probably created more anarchists than anything else that's occurred in human history, so far as I can tell. So, a similar effect I think will happen when and if Bernie doesn't get the nomination on the left. To what degree, I guess we'll just have to wait and see. But to the extent that they become disenchanted with the DNC and with politics in general, would be fantastic. So.
Right.
I'll keep my fingers crossed.
Let's hope, man.
I mean, how are the numbers breaking down as far as Bernie and Hillary? Because I know you were saying earlier, before the podcast, that you were reading that people are now projecting that, Bernie's not going to be able to pull it off.
I mean, maybe that was a little extreme. I think it was more Hillary has the potential to lock it up in March was what I read.
Okay.
But once again, this is coming from the Clinton News Network. So, I mean, it's not exactly like...
Yeah. Well, I mean, it seems like they're gonna just play all the party convention tricks that they did against Ron Paul. It's gonna be the same thing all over again. I don't see how there's any way they're gonna let Bernie win the nomination, regardless of how many votes he gets.
No. I got a little EC note here.
The EC. So apparently, Bergman, you want to air your opinions on my affinity for Chris Cantwell.
Not really, dude. I was just thinking it might be fun to just randomly go to Chris Cantwell's Facebook page.
Okay. And you just find a random quote and talk about it.
No, we can just break down his post, dude, and then see let's just see. I'm just curious.
We'll do an analysis.
Is that what you've been doing over there for the past 20 minutes?
No, dude. I was looking at porn.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Well, that's why you had your dick out.
That's what I'm doing.
I thought you were just looking at Chris Cantwell.
Yeah. He does the same thing whether he's on Cantwell's website or Pornhub.
So where does he post the most? Because he has a personal Facebook page, and then he has a page with
Well, he's constantly getting banned on Facebook, so he doesn't do much there.
He's getting banned.
Oh yeah, as soon as he gets on ban, he gets banned again. Because people will
report all this stuff.
Yeah, they'll just report everything, whether it's legitimate or not.
That's kind of fucked up.
I mean, it is, but it's to be expected. Certainly at this point. So, I mean, really, most of his content he's putting out, I think, is just his Monday, Wednesday, Friday podcast. I mean, he does have the website. I think
he does 3 podcasts a week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, he still puts out essays and stuff on his website. Maybe not as much as he used to, but still pretty regularly. Was there something particularly inflammatory that you wanted to bring up, or?
I don't know. I'm scrolling through his shit right now.
Maybe we should move on to something else then.
Well, let me know when you find something heinous.
Do you want to, while he's doing that, you want to talk about this Melissa Click?
Oh, this.
Okay, wait. Here's one.
Hold on.
Okay. He says, Cantwell says, congratulations, black Southern voters. Hillary Clinton counted on you to be stupid enough to vote for her. And like lambs to the slaughter, you complied.
Mm-hmm.
It's I believe he's referencing to like South Carolina.
I would assume so.
So I mean, was it only black people that voted for Hillary there? I mean, like, what is he getting at?
No, but I'm sure.
Is he saying they should have voted for Bernie? Is that the?
Well, no. They shouldn't be voting for either of them. They shouldn't be voting.
I feel like
they
he just
shouldn't
likes
even
to bring
be.
up black.
Shouldn't even be
I don't know.
Democrats. Well, I haven't seen the numbers myself, but I'm assuming
gotta be black, man.
as it typically is
No,
that they're voting disproportionately Democratic, which as they always do, and I'm guessing they voted disproportionately for Hillary.
Like I saw like earlier this month. I don't know if you saw this. He Cantwell prepared something for like Black History Month, where it was basically like it was some black lady who had like 15 illegitimate kids.
Oh
and,
yeah.
And he's just like, and he's ragging on her for collecting welfare and saying that she needs more money from the state. And it's like,
I mean, if you've seen any of like the videos and news stories that's been done on this person, I mean, she's a particularly egregious welfare whore as being too.
yeah, but I
too
mean,
nice.
why bring this lady up for Black History Month?
Well, because she was black.
Yeah, but that's nothing to do with Black history, dude.
I mean,
Because he's making a mockery of the whole practice and the concept.
I mean, you could find white people to do that too. You know, it's
Yeah.
why like
because
what is the point of this?
because you're not allowed to criticize black people in that way. And he objects, and I agree with them that it's a cultural taboo to talk about these kinds of problems that are very prevalent and disproportionately so in the black community. And it's taboo, and as a white person, you're not allowed to say those things. And I think that's completely ridiculous that what people are and aren't allowed to say is based on their own personal race. And I think that's ridiculous. And so he's just deliberately raising a middle finger to the current cultural taboos on what you are and aren't allowed to say in the name of political correctness.
Yeah, but to bring it up on Black History Month, like deliberately, that just
Yeah,
seems
it's
a
to
little
be-
egregious to me.
Well, it's deliberately supposed to be inflammatory because the whole problem is that people consider it inflammatory and inappropriate and improper to say those kinds of things. So it's like, okay, you don't think I should say that? Now I'm going to do it in the most egregious way possible.
But it's insinuating that because this lady's black, that's why she's doing this. Whereas it doesn't have anything to do with the color of her skin. It's just a matter of.
I think the system does disproportionately enable people to be complete pieces of shit like this woman. They do disproportionately enable, and thus it's
they also
destructive.
disproportionately jail black males.
Because black males disproportionately commit crime, and this has been backed up by study after study. Not just the FBI reports, but there's also independent criminal victimization surveys that pretty much perfectly mirror, all the FBI crime stats and everything that show. And when I say crime victimization survey, they're talking about they go out to the people that were the actual victims of these crimes, which are themselves disproportionately black. And saying, well, what was the race of the person that mugged you or robbed you or whatever it was? And those people who are themselves disproportionately black, the victims,
So why do you
are
think-
saying that it was a black guy that
Why do you
mugged
think
me.
that's the case?
Why do I think that's? Because the Democrats are trying to keep them on the plantation. I mean, that's a whole other discussion. But basically, I mean, because the current
Because
political
of the welfare system.
Yeah, basically because the welfare state is used as a way to keep them down and keep them in the economically disadvantaged situations, or however you want to put it.
I mean,
the welfare state is keeping them down. They're psychologically telling them that they're nothing but victims and that there's nothing they can do, that everybody hates them, and blah blah blah, and all this nihilistic, deterministic nonsense and bullshit. And they're basically just brainwashing them. Both verbally as well as economically into being
Chattel.
yeah, basically into being completely ineffective, useless people, which is unfortunate, but it disproportionately affects black people. That is a simple fact. And I think it's important to realize that this is something that's perpetrated upon them by the political classes, namely the leftists and the Democrats.
Yeah, I mean, well, what about if a black guy and a white guy get tried of the same drug crime? It's the black guy's more likely to get more time. And then furthermore,
I don't know that that's true.
Well, furthermore, you have to remember in the past year there was that dude from the DEA that came out, and he said that they were told not to bust people in white neighborhoods. This is somebody from the DEA.
Well, I don't think that was. I don't think that was
Rand
specifically
Paul-
because
even
they were
Rand
white
Paul-
neighborhoods. It was because they were the neighborhoods of the people in power, the political
Rand
class,
Paul
etc.
acknowledges these things, dude.
Well, for example, your stat on like
There
black
are
people get
injustices, dude.
for example, well, the problem is that you're not comparing apples to apples. For example, my understanding is that with the stats concerning
points, but I mean, dude, but there's
You can't
a whole
deny.
other
You
side
can't
of the
just say
coin.
that racism isn't a factor in any of this.
well, I
You
think
can't say that racism is just something made up by the liberal media. There's
I mean, the version that they portray is pretty much a complete
and-
fantasy into fiction. I think there
yeah,
is.
I think
Well, sure.
they do use racism to divide people.
Yes.
Yeah,
I mean,
racism
totally.
only exists insofar as it's a tool that the left uses. It's a boogeyman that the left uses to manufacture real life
Well, I mean,
tragedy.
I know people that are
but-
racist. I mean,
Well, okay.
it definitely exists.
But to what extent does their racism actually impact somebody else? Like, sure, there's some people out there that make inappropriate jokes about black people or something, but they're not
I'm
out
not
there.
talking-
They're not out there actually lynching black people or anything. They're not at their job. Don't actually kick black people out of their store or something. I mean, somebody's private personal opinions, while they may be disgusting or whatever, generally don't manifest in any
Well,
sort
if
of
they're in a
racist
position
fashion.
of power, it can manifest. If they're a cop, it can certainly manifest.
It potentially can, but what I'm trying to say is that a lot of these stats that people bring forward are not nearly as clear cut as what they're trying to make them out to be. For example, Matt brought up that black people will be get greater sentences for drug crimes. Well, in a lot of those situations, again, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but for example, this is the reality of what's going on. A lot of those times, that's because these are people who have been charged with multiple crimes, and they're taking a plea bargain down to, for example, just a drug crime. So, for example, this guy went out and jacked some woman for her purse and stole her car, and then got pulled over and happened to have some drugs in his pocket or whatever. And so the DA or whoever basically gets them plea down to just a drug charge and drop the things that would be harder to prosecute him on, like, for example,
dude,
the
you
mugging
don't think
or
there's like a
something.
little bit of racism in the system? Like, oh, well, Billy the white boy, he made a mistake. He has a little bit of cocaine, His family's got a little bit more money, They get the lawyer, they get him off. It's all forgiven. But Tyrone the thug, he's got to pay. We're going to make an example out of him.
Well,
you don't think none of that goes on, dude.
I mean, maybe anecdotally here or there, but I mean, first there was actually, for example, there was he was actually used to be a Baltimore cop. He's kind of a lefty, and I've heard him. I think I heard him first on like Joe Rogan's show.
Yeah.
So you guys know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And for example, he talked about his experience. And I don't know that Baltimore is some sort of exception because it is a black Democrat-run city with their police, their police force is disproportionately black, at least compared to the general population. And his experience was that black officers were a lot worse and harder on black suspects or criminals or whatever. That was just his observation.
Yeah.
He had a theory as to why that was. I don't know if it's relevant or not.
What was his theory, dude?
His theory, and he only puts it forward as a theory. He's just saying this is what I think it may be. Is that the black officers just felt that the black hoodlums or criminals or whatever were just a poor reflection on the black race in general, and so
Right.
they just resented them even more. Insofar as like, you fucking dumb hoodlums, you're out here making all the rest of us black people look bad. Kind of an effect, which I think is it doesn't excuse it, but it's understandable, and that makes sense to me.
Explanation for the way some people think.
Yeah. So I mean, anecdotally perhaps, but when you look at the actual stats and you actually compare apples to apples, there's not really a whole lot of any significance of racist behavior, to see there. Again, you look at black people that are shot by cops. If you look at, now they are disproportionately shot. Now, there's actually more white people get shot by cops than blacks. That's a fact. By population, black people are, in fact, more disproportionately shot by cops. So blacks, I think, are like 12-13% of the population. They make up more police shootings than 12 or 13% are black people.
Gotcha.
But if you look at the rates, the criminal rates, they're actually disproportionately shot less. So blacks are out committing, the vast majority, young black men are out there committing the vast majority of murders and violent crimes. But if you compare their demographic representation in perpetrating those crimes versus the people that are getting shot by cops, it's actually disproportionately less that they're getting shot. in theory, you can make the argument statistically for perpetrating a given violent crime, a white person is actually more likely to be shot by a cop than a black person. Now, maybe you could say at that point that you're just torturing the statistics, and maybe you'd be right. But the simple fact is that the statistics certainly don't support the opposite conclusion, that the blacks are being shot disproportionately more often compared to how often they're actually interacting with the police for suspected criminal activity, et cetera, et cetera. Now, I'm not saying it's not a problem that people are getting shot by cops. I'm not a friend of cops. I don't think they should exist. But within the current paradigm of, we have to have police to keep people safe or whatever, the stats don't bear out that there's some sort of horrific systemic racism. I don't doubt that anecdotally that all sorts of horrendous, horrible shit happens all the time. But to say that systemically it's clearly racist, I mean, I don't know. I haven't seen any evidence that really makes that compelling of a case for it.
But I mean, would you argue then that the racism just lies in the welfare state itself that's keeping down the blacks? Or is it not racism so much as they're just being used as a tool to support the Democratic Party?
The latter. Which I don't think is really that explicitly racist. I think it's just sort of incidental.
Right.
But the fact is that, they're disproportionately being taken advantage of by the Democratic Party for sure.
Right. Not necessarily because of their race, but because of their history.
Yeah, I don't think...
Because they were able to sort of be forced and segregated, which made it much easier to create the victim.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think that they were, that they were identified as being far more susceptible to the victim narrative, which I'm sure has a lot to do with, the history, of the U.S. with Jim Crow and slavery or whatever. I'm not saying none of that matters at all. But I think in this context, I think it was just an opportunistic thing of that the Democrats said, hey, our whole philosophy relies on creating a victim class that's dependent on us. These guys make for really good victims, and so they've been taking advantage of them ever since. I don't think it's specifically because their skin is so dark we have to victimize these ones. I think it's just incidental that this demographic is particularly vulnerable and susceptible to our bullshit brainwashing.
Sure.
If you want to call that racist, I guess it depends on how you define it. That I think maybe you could call that racist.
Yeah.
I don't know how we got off on this whole thing. Well, since we're talking about race, it would be a perfect time to bring up what you were beginning to mention, the Melissa Click thing.
Yeah.
So she just got fired, and I'm absolutely thrilled. Now, were you guys familiar with exactly who she was before the podcast?
Yeah, I am, but you might want to explain it for our listeners.
So the whole Mizzou protests, that was a thing. I don't want to get too in depth into that, but it was basically all the Black Lives Matter protests going on at Mizzou, where they called for the dean to resign, and he did, and all sorts of other nonsense. They were having a protest or sit-in or some sort of thing out in a public, quad or square or something on campus. It's a public area. Having some sort of demonstration, but they didn't want the media there, even though it's in a public space where anybody can be, much less than, of course the media can be there. Sure. And for some reason they didn't want the media there, and so they were bullying people and physically intimidating people and telling them, you have to leave, you have to respect our right to privacy. It's like, well, if you want to be private, why are you out in a public space? I mean, it's completely insane. But so there was a communist professor there named Melissa Click, who's actually a journalism professor. Or I guess it was some sort of like media or communications, and she had like a PhD in journalism. Well, I'm just saying, I'm calling her that. She's clearly a Marxist. I mean, if you know anything about Marxism, the Frankfurt School, and critical theory, then you know exactly what she's doing and what she is. She's a devout Marxist. That's just my own personal side note. Okay. So either way, she's a professor there. She was partaking of this Black Lives Matter. I think they're actually, it's Concerned Students 1950, I think is the name of their specific organization at Mizzou. So anyway, there were journalists there covering it. They were bullying them and literally like pushing them out physically and stuff. there was a student journalist there who actually happened to be Asian, so he's not some sort of white supremacist patriarchal. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
But he was a journalism student at the school doing reporting for the school paper on this event. And, you know, he was just there filming. And Melissa Click, this professor, came up to him and said, "You need to leave." And he said, "Actually, no, I don't." And her response was, she yelled over to a crowd of people and said, "Hey guys, I need some muscle over here. We need to get this guy out," or something to that effect. But she did specifically say, "Hey, I need some muscle over here."
Yeah, like violence.
Yeah. Oh, and she like smacked his camera or something. You can't quite tell because it's like just outside of the frame. But like she clearly was, she was already getting physical with himself, and those making physical threats of like, "All right, I'll get some big people over here to come and physically push you out." So at some point, third-degree assault charges were involved. I don't know if those have been followed up on or if they're being pressed or whatever. I sure hope they are. But regardless, she was, I think, immediately suspended over it. And just recently, whatever board at the college it is that decides these things, they had a meeting, and I think it was a 4-2 vote to fire her. And thank God, because she's an absolute disgusting, despicable, disgraceful piece of shit who... Hopefully, if Donald Trump gets elected, becomes a fascist dictator and starts slaughtering leftists, I hope she's the first to go. But the most insane thing about this is that she has a PhD in journalism. This is what she teaches at the college, and she's trying to intimidate a journalist doing legitimate journalism. Exercise of the First Amendment of, yeah, you're in a public space. Of course, the press has the right to document this. I mean, just completely flying in the face of the First Amendment and everything about journalism and journalistic integrity and ethics and everything. I mean, in the name of physically intimidating this student journalist. I mean, it's just completely batshit insane. And her getting fired isn't nearly bad enough for what ought to happen to her, but I'll certainly take it.
Dude, I mean, don't all these statements violate the NAP, bro? You know who else doesn't like the NAP? Austin Peterson doesn't like it, dude. Have you looked into him much, bro?
Well, no, but she's clearly a Marxist operative that's trying to destroy all of society, and advocates for policies that violate the NAP. So she is herself violating the NAP, and so honestly, slaughtering leftists, Marxists, and communists is just self-defense.
So you advocate
and self-defense
for like what
is
they
not
did in the Philippines, like
I'm sorry.
So you're okay with what they did in the Philippines? Just
what did they do in the Philippines? Was it sort of like Chile?
What's that?
I'm not sure what you're referring to about the Philippines. Did they slaughter Marxists or something?
Yeah.
Oh well.
Communists.
You got to do what you got to do.
That's fucked up.
Well, I mean, what communist regime?
Or people that were just being accused of being communists.
What communist regime hasn't tortured, imprisoned, slaughtered, millions, if not tens of millions of people? Why don't we just
not slaughter anybody?
Well, I'd love to, but they keep pushing their agenda, so. I mean, I am being slightly tongue in cheek, although I do emphasize only slightly. I'm sorry. What was the last thing you said?
I don't know, dude. I don't know how to respond to that.
Well,
I don't think we can just slaughter people for their beliefs.
Yeah, I am being tongue in cheek, but the simple fact is that Marxism, communism, any government in general. I mean, we're anarchists here. We understand that the government is aggression.
Yeah,
so
but I mean, by that logic,
aggression.
we should slaughter all statists. Anybody that supports, and even minarchists, even those in the Libertarian Party, we should slaughter because they approve of some force against us. That's just.
Well, I think there's a case to be made for that. Now, practically and pragmatically, I'm not saying we should, but I'm just saying the simple fact is that they are aggressing. I mean, do you deny that? So
you're just saying in self-defense, we reserve the right to kill someone that's aggressing against us, even if it's through the proxy of.
Well,
government.
That's the principle of self-defense. I mean,
sure, yeah. I'm just trying to unpack what you're saying.
I mean, it's just a question of where do you draw the line. I mean, if a cop is arresting you for a nonviolent crime that has no victim, like let's say, for possession of marijuana or something.
Yeah.
Do you have the right to exercise self-defense against that cop? In principle, of course, absolutely.
Sure.
Well, okay. So what about the politician that passed the law and supports the law and funds the police officer that does that? Do you have a right to self-defense against him? So it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to have self-defense against the cop if you can't exercise self-defense against the person that's created the cop, that is funding and advocating for, and enabling and authorizing. I mean, so we have a right to self-defense against politicians, don't we?
So, but then, what about somebody that just like tacitly supports the police? I mean, you'd have to go around just murdering everybody.
It all gets into a very gray area, and that's why I don't actually literally, honestly advocate for the slaughter of millions of people. I am being tongue-in-cheek here. Okay. But I think there is a legitimate case to be made for self-defense. What these people are doing is aggression. Sure. Aggression justifies self-defense. It's as simple as that. Now, where and how that's applied gets very gray very quickly, as you point out, for sure. I'm not saying that like, oh, I voted for Carter back in 76. Oh, that's it, to the gulag with you. You know, obviously I don't actually advocate that. Right. But, you know, these are people that openly advocate for, you know, if you want to sell an insurance policy that doesn't cover all forms of birth control, well, we're just going to fucking, you know, force you to comply with us by threat at gunpoint if we have to. Right. Well, how can you not say that that's aggressive? They're saying we're going to fucking kill you if you don't comply. I'm pretty sure that's aggression. Sure. And aggression is what justifies self-defense. So,
yeah, I don't know. All right.
So Melissa Click is out.
Yeah.
And also Jeb Bush is out, which I think is thrilling news. Were either you like disappointed by that?
Yeah, no. Matt's a huge Jeb Bush fan.
Yeah, you look like a Jeb fan. Do you have one of those little turtles in your pocket?
When I said I was a fan of Bush, that I didn't mean Jeb Bush.
Oh, I got you.
I was just talking about Bush.
You know? Talking about Ethan's Bush.
Yeah, Ethan's Bush.
No, I thought you were talking about that '90s band with, what was his name, Gavin Rossdale?
No.
Whatever happened to him?
Dude, that band was pretty dope.
Didn't he? Wasn't he married to like Gwen?
Stefani?
Yeah, Gwen Stefani. Whatever happened with that? They get divorced?
I believe so. Yeah.
Did he? Whatever happened to that guy? I mean,
I don't know. That band was cool, man.
Yeah, I mean, when I was in I think it was like 7th grade. 16 Stone. That was the name of their album, right? Dude, I love that album. When I was like 12, that was some good shit. Nothing. He's probably got shipped off to the gulags. Well, either way,
I didn't see this coming though. I didn't see Jeb Bush being out early in the primary. At least not like you know, a year ago.
Yeah, it's funny because he was like the projected GOP front runner,
right?
And I mean, you could tell like somebody wanted him in there really bad because like
the Illuminati, dude.
Yeah, well, who knows? So
the lizard people.
Because even after the debates were going on for a while, and he still had like fucking like 3%, people were still saying, "But Jeb," you know, like,
yeah.
But what? You know,
the guy just didn't even want to be there. You know?
Well, it was clearly so forced. I mean, and the guy really is just like a total pussy. I mean, there's no way. I don't understand.
Video where he was like, "Please clap."
yeah. Please clap. Yeah, and even when he said he was suspending his campaign, he's like, "I'm announcing that I'm suspending my campaign," and people are like, "Oh," he's like, "I know." Just acting. I mean, he's just such a pansy. I mean, I don't understand how he ever even got to be a governor. Well, other than he's a Bush, so obviously that's his
Florida,
connection.
Right?
But as far as being like some sort of commanding alpha personality, like Jesus Christ. But I think the real victory here is all the wasted campaign donations. Because I can't imagine why anybody would have supported Jeb other than trying to just buy favor because he's supposed to be the establishment candidate. I mean, who in their right mind was like, you know what, who I think has the best policies, who I think has the character that'll really engage the American public? Jeb Bush. That's who we should get behind. Nobody fucking thought that. Yeah. I mean, what more blatant, obvious candidate of just complete milquetoast, we're only putting him out there because we can buy him, bullshit is there. And I think, I didn't pay close enough attention to the numbers or anything, but I think he set some pretty impressive records for wasting campaign donations. Like he raised hundreds of millions of dollars, like over $100 million.
Wow.
And got essentially nothing in return
what happens
for
with
it.
that money?
I don't know. That's a good question.
I always wondered that. Like, do they just keep it? Does it go to the GOP? Like, how does that work?
That is a good question. Maybe it does just go back into the GOP coffers. I feel like I should know that.
Yeah.
I mean, I know lots of times campaigns end up being in debt.
Right.
So, in fact, I want to say Gary Johnson was hitting me up for money after 2012, saying hey, so the campaign's in a lot of debt if you want to donate. I seem to recall that being a thing, but I don't know. I mean, maybe there isn't any money left. I know they're spending a whole lot of money. I think it was what was the first primary state? Was it Ohio? or no, Iowa.
Iowa.
Somebody broke down like how much candidates spent per vote.
Yeah.
And his was just like off the charts. It was like $2,000 per vote that he got or something. I mean, just unbelievable.
Wow.
And it was all wasted. It's amazing.
But I wonder how much of that was like individual donors and how much of it was just like corporations and.
Well, I think it's safe to say that it was a lot more of the latter compared to any other candidate.
Yeah.
And that's why I'm so thrilled about it.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know what happens to the money. I feel like
I was thinking about that the other day. I was like, I feel like I should know this. But
I don't know. Are we allowed to give Matt homework? Like, can we assign you homework to go find that out? We need a research team. That's what we need. Matt, hire a research team.
We need just a guy on a laptop.
just sits in the corner.
So we kind of could have segued off the racism into this, but so apparently there was a KKK rally somewhere, and the headline came out that it was something like assault at KKK rally. So your initial thought, right, is the KKK lynched a black guy, but what actually happened? Apparently, from what I've heard, is it was a group of anarcho-communists started stabbing a bunch of KKK guys, who then fought back and stabbed back, and it became some kind of knife brawl fight. So,
yeah, I mean, how can you criticize the KKK for being a bunch of violent bigots when you're going out and doing the things that you're complaining about? I mean, it's just unreal. I mean, believe me, I'm no supporter of the KKK,
No.
but how can these idiots not realize, like, you're such a violent bigot that I'm going to get violent with you? It's like, well, wait a second. I mean, it's like the people that preach tolerance and, use tolerance as a tool to shut people up. It's like, oh, this person is hateful and that's why we can't tolerate him. It's all in the name of tolerance. It's like, wait a second. That makes no fucking sense.
yeah.
So yeah, it's just so ridiculous and unproductive.
It's also
and
funny that it was anarcho-communists, right?
Oh, I fucking hate anarcho-communists. They're scum of the earth. I'm in a couple Facebook groups that are sort of like anarchists. Well, they've
Are
at
you
least.
in that ANCOM versus ANCAP one or whatever?
I think maybe it was in that one at one. There's another one. I think it's anarchist philosophies, but whatever they were intended as, they just devolve into ANCAP versus ANCOM debates, and we should put quotes around those debates. With the ANCOMs, they're just such ridiculous, stupid, childish, nonsensical idiots. It's just unbelievable. They have no arguments.
Does it just come down to the fact that they don't believe in private property? Or they mischaracterize or recharacterize private property? I've heard it explained a few ways, where it's not necessarily that they're against, like, I can't own this microphone, that I can't own a like an apartment complex and be a landlord.
Yeah, so
like rent, not rent seeking, but
well, yeah, rent is supposed to be a terrible evil. In which case, I say they should all go terminate their leases and go try to buy a house, which of course they don't have the money for, so they'll just be homeless. And so, okay, fuck them. But my understanding is there's a distinction between personal property and private property. Personal property is things like your toothbrush.
sure.
Private property to them is basically any capital good, anything that is productive. So, for example, if you have a car, that's personal property.
Yeah.
If you just use it to drive around, drive to the store, drive to see your friends, go take a road trip, that's fine. What you cannot do is use it as a cab, because then that becomes private property, and that's the means of production, because now you're using it to make money. And so now that same exact car that it's totally cool for you to use it for personal uses, but you cannot use it to make money. Now, that's not how they would describe it, but that's essentially what it comes down to. And fundamentally, I've yet to hear a successful actual criteria to determine what is and isn't, personal versus private property.
Right.
It's basically, if somebody's using it to make money, then it somehow becomes unacceptable. It's completely insane and ridiculous and contradicts itself. And the other weird thing that I still can't wrap my head around, because they can't describe it in any way that makes sense, is that capitalism is statism. which is very bizarre because they say that capitalism can't exist without the state, and thus the state, is capitalism, and
Well,
that one makes no sense to me.
Don't they also make the argument that private property is aggression, and therefore that is like private property is in and of itself statism?
Yeah, which doesn't make a lot of sense, and I haven't heard a description or explanation that
seems very
helps it make any sense. It is. It's basically, it seems to be just an emotional reaction of whether or not they like it or not.
Or whether or not they have any money themselves, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it's completely nonsensical, and anytime...
You don't find any entrepreneurs that are anarcho-communists, right?
Well, I think it comes from the belief that all of your rights are granted to you by government, wouldn't it? Like, so your property is granted to you by government.
Well, they would say that...
Isn't it that you can't secure the property without government?
Yeah, that's part of their argument. Is they say that the only reason that the capitalist controls the factory is because the government protects it for them. If they didn't have the government police protecting the factory, then we would all, I don't know, lynch the management and do what with the factory? I don't know. Yeah. But it's just a very emotional, reactionary, nonsensical kind of argument. And I wish I could explain it better, but as far as I can tell, there's nothing more to explain.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how I've heard it. And it just seemed completely arbitrary to me as compared to something like ANCAP or voluntarist, where it's basically, we just don't aggress against each other and we can possess property. I mean, it seems that simple to me.
It's, and here's where I sort of tried to start to understand it is insofar as I think you can maybe have... There's probably discussion left to be had as far as homesteading rights, as far as at least in particular, I think.
What are you saying within ANCAP or within?
What?
Or just in general homesteading?
Where the ANCOMs have a disagreement. So, for example, when it comes to homesteading land and saying let's say I homestead a lake, and I put some sort of
dock on it.
Yeah, let's say I put a dock on it and I don't know, I open it up for swimming or something. Like I clean up the water and put in I don't know.
Okay, yeah.
But the point is that it's an existing natural resource. Yeah. I think when it comes to natural resources like land, for example, that maybe there can be some discussion there about how that those resources are homesteaded. Sure. Of course, I've never heard any reasonable argument from any anarcho-communist about how one would go about, doing that, because they just think it's just outright, just completely illegitimate. And it makes no sense, because then they'll say of course you can have, your home, you can have your tent that you live in, and that's, your tent. Then that's your personal property. Of course, that's not private property, that's personal property, and you can have that. It's like, well, okay, but what about the land that it's on? If I can't own the land that it's on, then what's to stop anybody else from coming up and saying, no, that's where I want my tent, get the fuck off. Right. And now you have a conflict over limited resources that are available, which is the whole reason we have Austrian economics, is this understanding, or economics at all. It's this recognition that resources are limited and we need to have a methodology for which to resolve conflicts, because conflicts are inevitable because resources are finite. Sure. I can entertain some arguments over how to homestead, for example, a lake or something. Maybe they could say, you can't own that lake because I need that lake for something or whatever. I can maybe entertain.
Or that lake runs into this other area, so then by you owning that part of the lake, it affects... Yeah. And the simple fact is that traditional common law and private property rights have done a reasonably good job of sort of sorting out and figuring out some standards that we can all use when it comes to those kind of things that are legitimate conflicts and concerns and potential gray areas. But they can't even begin to address that because their philosophy just makes no fucking sense on its face. So they can't even begin to actually apply it in any sort of reasonable manner. But that's why I read some criticisms of turning natural resources into private property, and I thought, well, okay, that's maybe a slightly compelling argument. Let me read more. And it all just went downhill from there. Oh, okay. It's just like, oh, okay, this is just bullshit. Yeah. All right. What? Does anyone else want to? Do we want to get into the Edward Snowden thing, or?
I think that's about it for this week. So once again, I'm going to plug the event on Friday at Alewife in Baltimore. That's ALE Wife. And Gary Johnson will be there, and we'll all be hanging out from 7:30 to 9:30 p.m. Tickets are $15 in advance. You can find those on Gary Johnson's Facebook page under events. Click on Friday, March 4th at Alewife, and it's called A Buzz in Baltimore, I believe is the name of the event. So if you type A Buzz in Baltimore in on Facebook, you should be able to find it that way even. And come and hang out with us. I'm going to be there. Jared's going to be there. Ethan, you're going to vag out?
I think I'm going to be busy that night. I think I might be working. If not, I may try to make it.
Yeah, man, that would be pretty sweet, dude. If you could be there.
I do love me some Johnson.
It's Gary Johnson and not Trump, but
you'll have to do.
Yeah. So yeah, man, this should totally rock. So
Awesome.
Until next time, live free.
That is shed, drenching the flags of the tax bombs in red. Was its way of few at the expense of the many. Sold to the gods and the death machine. You can't justify killing by economic gain. For God, country, and democracy, you can put freedom at gunpoint in a fine land. You support the troops, then bring them home. I believe that you will do the best for you, and I believe that we have the power, have the power. I hate the state, and I know I'm a slave. We can make a break the power, break the power. Society owes individuals nothing more than non-interference with natural rights. Once a virtuous person fully comprehends the non-aggression principle, the violence of the state becomes obsolete.